I am Christopher Balzano, and welcome to Tripping on Legends. Tripping on Legends, the only show that I don't know that I host that doesn't cut me off. Anyone who's following my social media knows that this is the I think it's like 10-year anniversary, the 10-year anniversary of when I was on South Coast. I was on Coast to Coast AM, and George Norrie cut me off, but no one can cut me off on this episode because this is my show and I have control of it. And therefore, regardless of how much I love Edgar Allan Poe, I will not be turned off for the Telltale Hearts. Like I said, I am Christopher Balzano. You are listening to us on midnight.fm, where it's always midnight. For our midnight.fm patrons, fans, however you want to call it, we will be keeping the Discord open tonight for you guys. And if you guys are on Discord in general and listening to us, you can always comment what's going on in the show at Tripping on Legends. For our Facebook Live folks, thank you for coming in. I see you guys already have a really active chat going on. You guys got a little bit of behind the scenes as we were getting things ready tonight. You guys can always feel free to comment. We try to respond as well as we can in the time that we have. And of course, our IGTV we've got working tonight. And we try to respond to you guys as well. Although the writing is really small and I'm getting old, and so I don't have the same vision that I once had to do that. And of course, speaking of vision, if you want to call into the show, if you want to talk about tonight's topic or anything, whether it's a legend from your area, whether it is a spooky story you want to tell, whether you want to give a sterling review of haunted Florida ghost stories, I'm going to get the title right one of these days. You can feel free to call in at 813-418-6822. I can actually read that this time. Very interesting idea we've got going on tonight. We've tackled this subject in a few different ways at Creepy on Legends, at Tripping on Legends. I'm all over the place tonight. And we've done it justice, I feel. But there's always more to be said on it, especially when specific things come up. And that is the idea of the folklorist versus the storyteller. So if you haven't heard yet, I'm doing kind of a big event in Ruskin, Florida on October the 30th. It's kind of the only real big thing I'm doing in terms of events this Halloween season, this holiday season. And they wanted to do something different. And they wanted to try to present what I do in a different way that I'm used to. How about your hat? And so I was taking kind of a page out of Jeff Belanger's book and out of Tim Weisberg, Andy Lake, one of the Johnsons, I can't remember, and Frank Grace, with this whole idea of an evening of New England ghost stories. And so I obviously not being in New England or people having no interest in me doing New England ghost stories, it's obviously an evening of Florida ghost stories. And it's in Ruskin, so it's kind of in this area that's close to St. Pete, close to Tampa, close to a lot of the different things that we've legend tripped over the years. And so I figured I've got enough stories, I'm going to do the same kind of thing. So rather than doing my same old presentation, quote, the Raven nevermore on my show, I decided that I was going to come up with the best stories, and rather than doing kind of what I feel I'm best at, which is telling the stories and then spending more time talking about the background and talking about the history of it and talking about why it can't be, or even what it means in a larger sense, I'm going to just tell the story, right? Just let the story be the story. And one of the criticisms that I've gotten for many of my books, including Haunted Florida Ghost Stories, is the idea of they're not scary enough. They're not spooky enough. And so I decided to maybe reevaluate some of the stories that I've been telling. go with just the story and amp up the creepy factor. And I honestly feel I'm a Gemini. I don't have my Gemini cup tonight. I just have a plain old white cup. I honestly feel there are two sides to my personality. And one side of my personality is this storyteller aspect of things. And that's the desire to not only get other people's stories, but to retell them, to formulate them, to create some kind of narrative using them, and present that to people, right? And so oftentimes my stories are a few different stories. I've got the Gemini cup now. I've got a few different, thank you, helper. I've got a few different stories of about one location, about one legend, and I mix them to present. Then there's the other part of me, which is more along my path. And I've discovered this so much in writing the new book and not being into the way that it's going, and that is the folklorist. And that folklorist part of me that wants to understand and explain and think it's as interesting, the sociological aspect of these things, as the creepy factor. And I like the creepy factor. We all like the creepy factor. No one starts this by saying, like, I want to analyze the behavior of the average citizen as it pertains to his surrounding environment. It's Halloween, right? We don't do that on Halloween. On Halloween, we want to be scared. We want skeletons and cobwebs and witches and boo and like weird knockings and all these kind of crazy things. But that folklorist can't be completely put down, right? I can't suppress it. Hashtag follow the signs. I was looking at my Facebook memories, and I came across today. It was a memory today, in addition to my coast to coast debacle, of me saying that I had started making a comic book. And the comic book was I still think it's a great idea, but I can't get anyone to work with me on it because artists are kind of like that. But the idea was an analysis and a going through of different legends, legendary ghost stories, haunted ghost stories. Essentially, what I'm doing here on Tripping on Legends, but it follows the war, the argument, the confrontation between these two characters, and one was the storyteller, and the other was the folklorist, right? And the folklorist was this professor. In my mind, he looked very much like Harold Brunvard, and he was often just discussing the things that like I do. And then there was this kind of creepy figure. He began in my mind as I wish I could go to Appalachian Mountains. He began in my mind as looking very much like the Crow, like the cartoon version of the Crow, the comic book version of the Crow. And then over time, he started to look a lot more like old, essentially Roland, right? He looked like old Clint Eastwood. And he would often be, like, the stories would play themselves out, and he would be in the background, like, sitting down, and you wouldn't notice him maybe the first time you read it. And other times he would just be, like, sitting in front of a campfire, or he'd be walking down the road. And it was just this idea that he drove everything, and the storyteller commented on everything. And the two of them would approach the same story, but they didn't like each other. And so they would argue kind of from a distance to each other. And I really like that idea, and I really think it's an idea that will work. And of course, it's driven by the story. These are just two characters, kind of like the Crypt Keeper. They just kind of narrate the story and guide it through, but the stories would be key. And I have probably 40 pages of old school, like write the script out, like write the cartoon as a script, write the comic as a script. Box 1 is this, box 2 is this, because I can't draw it all. And I approached a few different people about it, and it's never been able to work itself out. But I think it's a really great idea, and it's kind of the framing of tonight. As I approach this event, I look back upon now 3 years of active legend trips. We are on episode 80 right now And that's probably about how many legend trips I've been on, or how many of these stories I've tracked down. Like, I have more than 50 stories to choose from, 50 stories from my arsenal that come from all around Florida, right? And most of them kind of end at Gainesville, right? Like, I haven't done too much I haven't done almost nothing in the Panhandle except for the Coon Hill Cemetery. I haven't done too much. I mean, I know we explored with Tale of the Three Witches, like Fernando Beach and stuff like that. Really, most of them are on the West Coast, and most of them are below Gainesville, and so they're perfect for this Ruskin event, which is in and of itself like kind of right outside, or you can include it in the Tampa Triangle. But I falter, right? I have that academic mind that wants to analyze and wants the story to be the analysis. And I don't think it that successful. I don't think a bunch of people going out on a Saturday night, Friday night actually, the night before Halloween, looking to get freaked out, looking to get into the holiday spirit, want to hear about white man's guilt, right? Or want to hear about the idea of a failing town blaming a witch for something. So I decided I needed to call upon an expert. I need to call upon someone much wiser than me when it comes to telling the spooky side of the story. This is someone, I don't know how many of you, I know some of you know this story. About 2 years ago, we got called to the principal's office. We got called to the teacher's office, I should say, because Ella had been writing ghost stories. And she had been sharing them with some of her classmates, and they were so disturbing and so scary that the classmates told their parents. And we got brought down to talk about the fact that our daughter at age 8 or 9 was terrifying her classmates. And I'm like, so that means she gets an A, right? Like an A in the class. Like, what am I supposed to say? Like, stop being creative? So she obviously can tell a better ghost story than I can. And so why don't we bring Ella in right now?
Yo, what's up?
That's how she enters. Yo, what's up? How you doing?
I remember that, actually.
You remember that?
I do. And I remember the story was about a haunted house in the middle of the street. And, like, the girl was like, this house can't be haunted. People are stupid and stuff like that. And then the girl, like, her, like, feet sunk into the ground. Like, her skin melted off her face and everything. And they were so freaked out. And they were like,
Go ahead.
how interesting.
Right, and so the weird thing was, like I said, we got called in because of that, and we had to explain why our daughter is so wacky, and why our daughter is so like, so she obviously is better than me, and actually, you're the one who came up with the urban legend of the Black Boy too.
I did do that.
Can you remember? People are commenting on the hat, so before we get into the story of the Black Boy, can you tell people about what the hat is? Which you're wearing backwards, by the way.
I'm wearing the hat backwards?
Yes.
My life's a lie.
Okay, there you go. All right, so
They
there
look
you go.
the same.
Why are you wearing the hats? Tell people what the hat is.
So the hat is, so there's a sequel.
You can come a little closer.
There's a little
There you
movie. There's a little movie. What?
You can't move the table like that so dramatically. Go ahead.
So there's a little movie that the universe likes to call The Shining. And there's a sequel to The Shining, and that sequel is called Dr. Sleep. Oh.
Let's hope nothing picked that up. Go ahead, continue.
So the antagonist of Dr. Sleep, her name is Rose the Hat. And Dad noticed, like, I put on, like, we were at Spirit Halloween. We were looking for a costume for I don't remember what.
And we were looking to decorate because
yes,
last year I didn't get to decorate at all, so we were looking to decorate too.
So I put on one of the steampunk hats. Like it was like a top hat with goggles on it, and Dad was like, hey, you look like that one chick from, yes, he said chick. You look like that one chick from Dr. Sleep. I was like, oh, Rose the Hat? He was like, yeah. And that's when I decided, hey, maybe I can be Rose the Hat for Halloween. So we went to Goodwill and we found this jacket, and Dad literally went like this in the middle of the store.
Yeah, I was like, she looked so good when she found this jacket. It looked so much like the jacket she wears in the kind of the climactic scene of it. I was flipping out. You even look like her right now, like with that beige shirt and like your hair like all.
It's
wiggly,
like dark.
niggly.
It's dark purple.
Okay, whatever. I don't. I have a penis. Those things don't generally impact me. So, you've been asked. So that's what your Halloween costume is going to be. You're
Yeah,
going to be able to, and we were able to put together the entire costume for like $20.
Yeah.
So
and the hat, like
support your local Goodwill.
The steampunk hat itself was like $20.
Yeah, it was $28. I think at Halloween City or whatever it's called, Spirit Halloween, which I usually go to for ideas, and then I take them home and I go the cheap on it. So, I've asked you on tonight to present to me from your perspective, from your middle school officially, middle school story-centric, if you will, mindset. You have been hearing these stories for 3 years now, right? For 3 years, you've been hearing about tripping on legends. You've gone to more haunted places than most people who consider themselves paranormal investigators. What?
Take that.
I don't think we have to attack people based on it.
Well, you know what I'm talking
you
about.
might actually be in the show itself as kind of a plant. We've got like a little thing, because I've got to write this. I asked you to come on and give to me your 5.
You said 4.
Oh, okay, and a surprise one. So 4 and a surprise one. Your 4 and an extra one. The scariest, best story. So not the best folklore. Not the best folklore that's attached to it. But the best stories that Tripping on Legends has covered. Okay? And the one rule I had, which was a late comer to the game, was she couldn't do Robert.
Which made me very sad.
Because Robert's been done so much, no one cares about Robert anymore.
Robert is like my all-time favorite.
And Robert's my all-time favorite. I'll mention Robert or something like that. That might even be part of the funny interconnectedness we'll do, where you'll be like, how about Robert? And I'd be like, done, sit down, because it's overdone. But I have asked you to present to me 4 other stories from Tripping on Legends, and I want to test you on how well you know the story. Okay? Now, that said...
I have like short-term memory loss.
That said... what'd you say? I forgot what you said. That said, I'm also opening this up to the people who are in the chat. I know podcast-wise, this might be too late in the game by the time this is out for you guys to really give your opinion, but I would love to... Dude, what are you doing?
There we go. That's
I
better.
would love to get what you guys think is also the 4 or 5 scariest. Like, if you had to rehear a story in a dramatic way, because these are going to be dramatically told, what are the stories that you would want to hear in that dramatic, just the story sense that we're going to do during this event? Okay, we got to do this. That's weirding me out.
You can't
That's good
see.
enough. That's fine. You're not necessarily there to be seen.
Wow.
So, Ella,
I am a disembodied face.
why don't you tell us your number 4 choice? Not your number 4 choice for the 4th scariest story that Tripping on Legends has done.
I forgot.
And you can't do the one that Margie just said.
I was gonna say Swamp, which is my
You
number
can't.
1.
You can't.
I was gonna
Okay.
say Swamp, which is my number 1.
So spoilers. What I'm going to be doing is there's 2 halves of the show. There's 45 minutes, then a break where people are going to drink, I guess. It was very clear that there was going to be drinking involved, and then another 45 minutes. The second 45 minutes is all revolving around the Swamp Witch, and I'm telling it the way that I want to tell it. So it's essentially going to be a story that is supposed to be a straightforward story of me telling the tale of the Swamp Witch, and over the course of me telling it, I tell like 5 other stories. So, Witch of the Woods does not count because it is not a Florida story. It is a Bridgewater Triangle story. So I agree that the Witch of the Woods is one of the freakiest stories I've ever covered. I don't even know if you know that story. Maybe you should read it before you go to bed tonight. Okay. But it's not. So, Ella, hopefully you can spark some conversation. And of course, anyone can call in and feel free to interrupt her with your opinion.
Please.
813-418-6822 or hashtag Tripping on Legends if you are in that other app, Discord. So
also, can I join your Discord, please?
Not right this second.
Not this second. When the line
all right, Rose, go ahead. What do you got?
I would say my
number 4
was Pemberton Ferry, probably.
Okay, that's part of Witch of the Woods. It is.
It's not part of Witch of the Woods. You just said Witch of the Woods.
I mean, not Witch of the Woods, the Swamp Witch. You can't do Pemberton Ferry.
I hate you.
I hate you more. Go again. For those of you who don't know, I'm a single father, and I share 50% custody of my children. They're here 50% of the time.
Were you?
Due to circumstances beyond my control, I have had them for like a week and a half straight, and we are about to kill each other. So this is the tail end of it. This is the last day before I get rid of you. So that might be why there's some added stress in tonight's show.
What did I have?
All right, so don't try to rank them. Just give me one of the stories that you have.
The cemetery with the girl who got drowned. I don't remember what it was called, but I remember the one that heard that said like water or whatever.
Oh, okay. All right. That is Shiloh Cemetery.
That one, Shiloh Cemetery.
That is Whispers and Screams from Shiloh Cemetery. I was gonna, because she didn't give me these ahead of time because she wanted to surprise me. I don't have.
I also didn't have any planned.
I don't have right, and because she didn't actually do anything to prep for this, I don't have any episodes ready. But I will in the show notes when it goes to podcast, and then when I post it on Tripping on Legends Facebook page. So, what can you tell me about? What can you tell me about the Shiloh Cemetery? What do you remember about Shiloh Cemetery?
What I remember about Shiloh Cemetery, the first time I heard about it was in one of your presentations. I think I was at it. Wasn't that the one with the kid who kept going debunked?
I think so. Yeah, that was the one right next to the school.
Yeah. So yeah, there was this kid who kept going debunked, and I remember hearing something along the lines of there was a girl with red hair, if I remember correctly. She had like red hair, didn't she? I always pictured her with red hair.
I did too, but she doesn't have red hair.
She doesn't have red hair? That's nice. Well, there was a girl and she got drowned. And when you go to the cemetery, there's you can hear her. It wasn't you can hear her drowning or something like that? You could hear her doing something.
Okay.
And what I remember distinctly was that when you went there, you got like an audio clip of someone saying water.
The best EVPs I've ever gotten, the creepiest, I should say, EVPs I've ever gotten.
It was so cool when I
have been at this Shiloh Cemetery.
Oh,
so
and when the EVP when the EVP said water, it sounded like she was underwater.
It went water.
It sounded like
it was a guy's voice, actually, not a girl's voice. It was, I believe, the killer.
Yeah,
so the story. Okay, so I guess I'm going to present this to the audience. I know I've covered this before. I think I actually covered this a few weeks ago in the Cases That Haunt Me. Was Shiloh Cemetery in Sanford, which this is actually a story that's going to be in Haunted Ocala. And this woman, Shiloh Cemetery, is a forgotten cemetery. Behind a cemetery that's behind a cemetery that's behind the main cemetery. And it's as you go through the different levels of these cemeteries, not only do they get more haunted in that box right there, not only do they get more haunted, but they also get like more neglected and it's I mean the ones that face the street are absolutely beautiful. They're what you expect from like a city cemetery. And then as you go further back, you get to Page Jackson, I think. Which is an African-American cemetery, which actually has some pretty important historical African-Americans in Florida history in there, including Their Eyes Were Watching God, Zora Wow, English teacher here for getting this. But there's a grave for her. Even though she's not buried there, there is a cemetery plot and a grave for her and a headstone and everything. And the last of these horribly kept cemeteries is Shiloh Cemetery. And the story goes that in Shiloh Cemetery, sure, that in Shiloh Cemetery, there is a, don't put it there though.
I hang my hat.
I hang your hat. That she was murdered and she was dumped nearby. And she walks the cemetery to this day as a skeleton.
Yeah.
So she walks, she's got a cloak, she walks slowly, she's been known to put her hands on people. People see her figure, but when they see her face, it's just a skeleton. Don't mess with that at all. Okay. Because that's the feed. It's just a skeleton, but long hair. And that's where the red hair comes in, is because even as the years have gone by, there have been reports of red hair. And the interesting thing is that, see, this is the folklorist in me. I can't stop the folklore. Since I published that, the story's become even more famous. And in it, I talk about how there was a woman who matches the description who possibly could be this woman, and she has red hair. And I talk about the fact that if she had red hair and if this ghost had red hair, it would make it into the story, right? Like they just wouldn't say hair, they would say red hair, because red is so distinctive and it's so connected to the paranormal that they would mention that she had red hair, and they don't, which means that it's not this girl. But I've told that story enough, and the legend, the way that I retold it, and with commentary, is so popular that now people say she has red hair, even though that was never in any of the original reports. But it's a pretty scary story.
Yeah, I like that one.
So, what do you guys think? Do you guys think that the sometimes red-headed, it's always a redhead in my world, you've got to know that. Not to mention the fact that Natalie and I tripped that on our way up the coast, making our way to Indiana.
Yeah.
And that was like,
we heard the bing bang clack bang zoom bop.
And that was kind of like the tour of redheads. So the Ghost of Shiloh was like the one redhead we weren't trying to track down that trip. We had the redheaded hooker in the Biltmore. We had the redheaded hitchhiker that we never were able to find. And so there was like a lot of redheads in that trip. And so I think the redheads got kind of mixed in with the Shiloh story as well. So that's definitely one. It's kind of far from Ruskin if we're trying to keep it somewhat local to them. But it's definitely a good spooky story that you can tell. I can tell that in a creepy way.
Yeah.
Okay, that's number 4.
Number 4.
Feel free in the chat and on Discord to vote on the legitimacy of that one. She is literally taking out cheat notes.
Shut up. I'm not doing anything.
She's pulled out a reference guide. What is the reference guide you've pulled out?
Haunted Florida Love Stories by Christopher Bell.
You almost said haunted objects.
Yeah, I did.
You did, okay. So she's consulting the Bible now, if you will.
Bible?
Of haunted stories. So what have you got next for us?
The Oviedo Light.
Are you just saying that because it's a pretty picture right there? And it's a big picture.
Really pretty.
All right, what can you tell me about the Oviedo Lights? I think the Oviedo Lights is an interesting one because I think Oviedo's only like 45 minutes from Ruskin. So what do you know about, without reading the chapter out loud, which is really boring?
Oh, I
what do you know?
accidentally went to the Lizzie Borden one.
No, it just starts talking about Lizzie Borden.
Oh.
That's the way I tell a story. Get over it.
So, like, the Oviedo Lights are, like...
Just go. It's just a computer.
Okay. The Oviedo Lights are, like, these group of lights that can be seen around... Where do we see them again? Like,
Oviedo.
St. Peter's? Oviedo?
Oviedo.
Yeah, they're called the Oviedo Lights. And in order... No, are those the mini lights?
Those are mini lights.
Oops. But I don't remember too much about the Oviedo Lights.
That's okay. So you're saying the Oviedo Lights, but you're only saying that because you looked in the book, and in the book there was a pretty picture.
I'm sorry, I was saving the next one that I had in mind for a second.
Uh-huh.
Uh-huh.
All right, so go to the next one then, because you're totally blowing it here.
Bloody Bucket.
Bloody Bucket!
My resident story.
All right, Bloody Bucket. Beautiful, beautiful. Bloody Bucket And she's saying page 74. Go to page 74.
Really? Thank you.
What? I like it. It's like a follow your own adventure. Everyone reference page 74. Yes, that's the exact picture
That's the
she was
exact
looking
picture
at.
we were looking
Page
at.
74. All right, tell me about the bloody bucket.
So bloody buckets.
Have we overtalked the bloody bucket here?
No.
Have we overtalked it? I know when I talk about the bloody bucket, I'm consumed with the folklore of it. So I want to know from you, what is the spooky part of that story? Because to me, it's a story of the outsider. It's a story of the classic Crybaby Bridge. It's the story of how we were able to essentially follow the tracks of Charles Carlson and Weird Florida and find that the story was probably totally made up and and the bloody bucket and the bar down the street. What is the scary part of that story? So I'm going to let you take it. You tell me what's scary about that story, because to me it's such a great folktale. Folklorist, storyteller, what do you got?
I think the scariest part about that is the fact that when it's like repetitive.
Tell the story for those people who don't know. We can't assume everybody has their copy of Haunted Florida Love Stories out and can reference pages. So
wait, let me pull up the pages.
Nope,
in case
don't
you
pull
want
it.
it. I'm kidding.
okay.
So there was
It is in that book, yeah.
It is. Okay, so I forgot the name for it. So there's a midwife.
Wachula? Oh, midwife.
I was trying to remember what a midwife was.
I always forget. She's such my like little mini me because I always forget the word. Continue.
So there was a midwife, and her name was Wachula. No, that was where it was, right? Yep. Yeah, it's in Wachula, and it was said that this midwife decided that there were too many people, so she started taking when she delivered the baby, she would take the babies and she would kill them.
Okay, she wasn't stabbing them, but yes, she was killing the babies. Okay, continue.
She was killing the babies. And so every night she would go down to the river, right, with the baby blood from that day, like her daily blood emptying, and she would pour it into the river. So this eventually drove the midwife insane, and she would sit by the bucket, like at the river, like the bucket would be like next to her or something, and she would watch as it filled up with blood on its own. And it just drove her insane. Didn't she jump from the bridge?
Some people say she slipped and fell.
Yeah.
Other people say she committed suicide, but her ghost is heard splashing in the water. Like you feel, you
can
hear her.
Baby cries.
And you can hear baby cries.
And it said on a full, was it a blood moon? Probably a blood moon.
Just a full moon.
If you go on a full moon at midnight, right, then you would be able to see the river turn blood red.
It doesn't have to be at midnight, but it does have to be by the light of a full moon. We happened to go there on a night that it was a blood moon, so it was like a double tap. Now, here's my question to you. First of all, don't you think it's cool that if we tell that story, right, it's going to be the night before a full moon. It's going to be the 30th and the 31st, which is Halloween. It's almost like we can challenge the people to go out to Bloody Bucket and do this. What? Oh, they can't see. You can see it over there, though.
I'll show it to them.
So that's cool. Do you think that story is interesting without the folklore?
Yes.
Like, do you remember the folklore that's upon it? That is around it at all? Or do you just remember the ghost story?
Oh, well, I kind of remember the folklore.
What can you tell me about the folklore? All right, so here's my issue with that story. Is that... No, go ahead. What were you going to say?
One of my things is I really love the story, but I went to the Bloody Bucket Bridge during the daytime, and it was very obvious when I walked into the water. I had my shoes off. I walked into the water, and there is a rust, like a rusting.
We happened to be there during a time where there was a heavy rust.
Like on the bottom of the lake, there was a blood red like rust. It was rust. It wasn't blood. So I think maybe that is like what makes it look blood red.
I do too.
Even as much as I love the story, it's
so here's the issue that I have with the story. If I'm telling that story, So what Ella left out is that
Huh.
she was killing these children either because she was obsessed with population control,
Mm-hmm.
or that she was taking revenge for her children who had been sold to slavery.
Yeah,
Because
taken away
she
from
was
her.
a former slave. Ludmilla is her name.
Ludmilla. That's what it was.
Now, when I tell that story, so once again, remember we're talking the folklorist versus storyteller. When I tell that story, am I going to have to leave details out, right? Because one of the primary details of this story is that the people of the town find out what she's doing, or they start to suspect what she's doing. And do you want to give Margie the page number so she can prepare for the next story?
132.
But it doesn't make sense, right? Because if an African American woman, not that far removed from the Civil War, a freed slave, so she was a slave, is caught killing people's babies, they're going to kill her, right? Like, that always was one of the things about the story that never made sense to me, was that they let her go. They just fired her, and no one would hire her anymore, and that's part of the reason why she went insane, and blah, blah, blah. And so it's like, that part of the story has never made sense, and it only makes sense when you then say, does that not make sense? And then you bring, like, how it's not real up. So do you think you can get away with that? Like, or would you have to just change that part of the story? Like, retell the story? Keeping in mind that we could tell a true ghost story without telling all of the details, or with changing the part, little bit of bits and details. Because we aren't telling legends, we're just telling ghost story legends, right? And so we're allowed to change things that add to it. Do you think people would be, like, automatically out of the moment if all of a sudden it was like, and they fired her, they gave her notice instead of massacring her, like, or hanging her? Do you think that would, like, people would automatically call bullshit on that?
No. Because I do believe that, like, it makes sense. Because, like, they, like, hung innocent people.
Right, so don't you think they would
Like,
hang
that
her?
they would hang her, who killed, like, thousands of babies. Well, not thousands, but
Right, but they don't. They just fire her.
they just fire her.
So the story doesn't make sense.
Maybe they, like, they were attempting to leave her to poverty to, like, die slowly.
Okay, so torture?
As torture?
All right.
I don't know.
You're like, I don't know.
I wasn't there back then. I
don't
couldn't
know.
read their minds.
Yeah. So one of the reasons why I'm like this
Barely
is
an
because people are
inconvenience.
commenting on my the watch party as opposed to in here. So I'm trying to keep up with what they're saying here as well. Okay, number 3. Number 2. Me good math. Number 2. And I see that you guys are in sync in the chat, and Ella, which really just means I think Ella is stealing your ideas from the chat room. So, but go ahead.
Thank you very much. Tomoki's love story.
This love story of Tomoki, which I don't think I've told enough.
I need to reread it because you just haven't told it that many times.
I honestly haven't.
Give me a hot second, just like
What, a hot second? Sure, a
Yeah.
hot second, and you can bring over the hot sauce as well.
wow.
So
Yeah,
Tomoki,
hot sauce.
Tomoki's a good story. I'm going to tell the story because people can't wait for you. But Tomoki is essentially the story of. So now I'm going to move to the center. Tomoki is a story of a Timakuan who wanted immortality. He wanted power. He wanted the power of the gods. So essentially, the fountain of the gods came down from the heavens, down in Ormond Beach, Florida, to this spring that's there, which is now the Tomoka Spring. And he stole the cup of the gods, and his idea was to get that power, get the immortality by drinking from this fountain using the cup of the gods. And this completely offended his people, and they turned against him. And they tried to kill him, and there was a huge battle that raged on and on and on. And he was killed by
his own people.
the woman that he loved. He was killed by the woman he loved,
Rip.
whose name was, I believe, Peeta, P-E-E-T-A, who
like Peter from the Hunger Games
shot him with like a poison arrow at the same time like that he was like shooting something with her. Like he was indestructible except for this magic spear. Maybe it was a spear. And she threw it and then they kind of like died together. And the cup disappeared, right? She had the cup. She was able to steal it back and then she died from her wounds. And now you can go to that spring. Like I'm not sure how spooky that story is though. The hauntings that happen. Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
And it said that if you walk down that if you walk down the street, you can see two lights playing with each other. And it said that it was the chief and the person that he loved who killed him.
Right. So in that story, you have to. In that story, you have to. The odds were not in favor.
The odds were not in his favor.
In that story, you have to mention the Ormond Beach Lights, right? Like you have to mention the other spooky things about that. Like it's not just that story. That story is not that spooky. People have not seen Tomoki by himself. They haven't seen like the figure of Tomoki. What's in that park that's actually even scarier is the Overseer.
The Overseer?
The Overseer.
I haven't heard of this.
Oh, what's that? The Overseer is a man who came from a long line, it seems, of really bad... An overseer is like a slave master. Mm-hmm. So he's the guy who's paid to look over the slaves and
his name is Huey. Right?
And
like Huey?
I believe so. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I just read about that.
Huey, yes. And books can be fun. And he was horrible. And there's a whole line of really bad overseers in that area of Florida, which is part of the spooky and the folklore part of it that I love. Folklore? No.
Storyteller.
Oh, damn you. So he either got drunk and fell off the boat, or he was murdered by the slaves. There's a lot of slave uprisings in that part of Florida. And his boat is still seen on the water there. So his boat is still seen on that little stretch of water. Ghost lights are seen on that water. Ghost lights are seen everywhere in Ormond Beach. But maybe the worst or most interesting or unique part of that story is people who walk that beach will feel an almost instantaneous feeling of being drunk.
Whoop.
Right? Like they'll be walking that beach, they'll be perfectly fine, and then like this, and not like a good drunk, like, how you doing? But like that nausea, that like confusion, stuff like that.
Of when you've been drugged.
Of what? Well, no,
when
just when you're
drunk,
because he was supposed to be really drunk. Now the story, because I'm seeing people saying he got pushed or he was murdered. The story is that he was drunk and pushed. Right? So it was an accident, but it was kind of like one of these kind of accidents. It's not like they murdered him and dumped him in the water. It was one of those things, they took him out on the boat knowing that he was too intoxicated to help himself, and then assisted in him slipping off the boat.
They were like, hey, buddy.
That's that. But I remember when we went there very distinctly, and we didn't know that story until we got there. We were asking about the Ormond Beach Lights. We were asking about the Bigfoot or swamp skunk ape sightings there, and the ranger told us that story. And then we went out to that location, and Natalie completely was affected by it. And she was like getting lightheaded. She was dazed and confused. It was one of those situations where, it was, maybe it was the story, but it definitely wasn't the hype of the story because we had literally just heard it.
Natalie was over here
Okay. I have no idea what you're doing right now. So that's a really interesting one. I'm not sure how scary it is. I know that it's a really cool story, and of course, the whole thing is made up. It was made up to sell hot sauce, but mainly because they wanted to make it a national park, and they wanted like a figurehead, right? They wanted like their own version of Mickey Mouse, and they created this Chief Tomoki and built a statue that was not there until then. And yet, it is a story of a failed town. It's a story of all these mysterious murders. It's a good folk story. I'm not sure if it's a good ghost story. Because you don't have that, like, creepy element of, like, things rising from the grave and stuff. Stop doing that, please.
Okay.
So I'm going to hold off on that one. I'm going to hold off. That's definitely what I'm going to do for the next library event. But I'm not ready to commit to Chief Tomoki quite yet. So number one, number one story.
Do you think they were like, hey, this chief got murdered like 5,000 years ago by his lover. Buy some of our hot sauce.
I think it was more of, it's a universal theme. This whole idea of him trying to steal the cup of the gods. I mean, like, that's, what do you call it? That's
cup of the gods, guys. It's the cup of the gods.
What am I talking about? I was just, that's,
It's the cup of the gods.
That's, Percy Jackson, right? Percy Jackson, the lightning thief, right? Like, the idea of trying to steal something from the gods. It's said over and over in Greek mythology. That's how you can tell when these themes are more European than they are Native American. That's when you know the story is probably not true. But essentially, it was just a fun story when they named the park that. And they wanted to create, like, here's Tomoki. And so the story didn't exist until then. So it's not necessarily that it was made just to sell hot sauce, although the hot sauce is... This house is bitchin'. The hot sauce is bitchin' big time. Before we get to the last one, because there are a few comments that have been made about this, and Nancy is the most recent one. Storyteller versus folklore. I think if you are attending, and I want your feedback, and of course you can feel free to call at 813-418-6822. It's pinned. If you are going to an event that's called an evening of ghost stories, I don't think as an audience member you want to hear that the story isn't true. Right? So as an audience, you've seen me do presentations. A lot of you guys have heard the episodes. Some of you guys have seen my live presentations. I know a lot of you have attended the library ones that I did for Orange County Library System. I've got one more of those coming up the week of the 28th. Does it take you out of the ghost story to learn wah, 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 it's not true?
No.
Poor K.
A ghost story is called a ghost story for the aspect of you get chills down your spine because it's so spooky. And scary, and it doesn't matter if it's real or not. It just matters if it's a good ghost story.
Okay, so so let me take a step back. Maybe there's a difference between it's not real and you're specifically told, did you like that? It was not a story. Here's the real story behind it. Like, I know that book over there, which I refer to often, not Haunted Florida Love Stories, but New England Ghost Files.
Haunted Objects.
Definitely not Haunted Objects. Part of what makes New England Ghost Files so creepy is that the stories are not told as ghost stories. They're told as interviews. And then at the end, the writer says, I followed up on this and I found that there was a dead person who committed suicide in the closet and his name was Seth. Da, da, da! Right? Like, that makes it scarier. That's a true story that's made scarier by it. Now, these are stories that are maybe scary to the people who experience it, right? But not necessarily just on its own. So if I were to say the Bloody Bucket, right? And then I were to say, by the way, it never happened. It's named after a bar where people got into fistfights. There was no Ludmilla ever. Then you then go back to the story and feel like robbed? If your idea is to get a ghost story, not your idea is to hear about haunted legends, but to get a ghost story.
Yes. You ruin the experience.
So I just totally could.
You folklorist.
I just totally just turned you around in like the course of like 2 seconds. What? You are weak-willed.
Yeah, no duh.
Okay, my daughter. Thank you very much. My daughter falls for everything.
Thank you, Seraphine.
She says I am not. I am way more creeped out by stories that are based on truth. And so the problem with a lot of these is people are experiencing real things. They have just made up stories to explain them, which is a hard thing to get across to an audience. And the second thing is, each one of these has a creepy most of these have a creepy moment of us going there, right? Like a scary thing or a creepy thing or an unexplained thing happened when we went there. But then again, now that's me telling my story and not the story, right? And so it's, I don't know how scary someone else's experiences are. Like, as if I go, and then I went, and this is what I said. I saw this thing hanging from a tree. Like, I'm not sure if that's it. Are you ready for your number one? What are you doing?
My nose is orange. I look like I have a beak.
Okay, you will do a little bit.
You're one to talk. Like a plague doctor.
Why don't you give us what you consider? Now, you gave a few at dinner.
I did.
You did.
I
Why
don't
don't you
remember
give what you think to be the scariest or creepiest or
Robert, I'm kidding.
Robert?
I can't.
She can't get over. She can't get over.
He's
Robert.
on my side.
She can't get over Robert. She might break up with Mothman for Robert. What are some of the stories that have compelled you that you've heard from me?
I would never break up with Mothman. Oh my god, I had one, but it's not scary. It's not like really scary.
All right, which one is it?
Mayaka.
Okay, so Mayaka State Park.
There's
What do you?
so many that. There's so many.
Oh my word, you're looking like you're stressing out here. Like you're gonna like flip
I'm
out.
going to hyperventilate.
It's just a podcast. There are like 5 people watching. Don't worry about it. What is the story of Mayaka that compelled you? Like, what story in Mayaka is the one that's spooky to you?
The Canopy Bridge.
Okay, why don't you tell the story of the Canopy?
The Canopy. Oh, no, you were asking me to be louder.
No, tell the story of the Canopy
Bridge. It's said that it was built. It's not. I don't remember if this is true or not. But it was sad that it was built like sometime before the Vietnam War, right? It was some type of war. And a bunch of men were coming back and they were so traumatized by like the warfare that happened, like that they were it was like imprinted in their brains and it caused them to go insane and they hung themselves off the bridge. So it said that like you can see people like hanging, I think. You can see people hanging like the thing.
Can I interrupt?
Also
I'm gonna assume that finger means no. Continue.
It said that like you can see they look normal. They will look normal. The ghosts will look normal. Like normal people. And they'll go like up to the top and then like when you go up to the top, they vanish. They're not there anymore.
Like there's no way for them to get away.
There's no way for them to get down without you seeing them. And they did not come down and they were not there.
The other part of that story is that it became a go-to place for suicide. So after the first one happened, other Vietnam veterans like were compelled to go to the same location and commit suicide. And then people who were Vietnam veterans who didn't know anything about the story would go to the location and then be overwhelmed by the compulsion to jump. And so it really became this kind of magnet. Now, again, the folklorist...
Shut up.
The folklorist in me...
Shut up.
Says the bridge wasn't built until 1998.
The bridge was not built until 1998.
The Canopy Bridge didn't exist until 1998. No one was coming back in the 1960s and 70s and committing suicide from this bridge. It didn't exist. It wasn't there. Yet, people are seeing things that they can't explain there, right? Like people are seeing things,
so it's a case
and they're
of
using
Tomoki.
it to explain it, right? This is what they're saying explains it.
It's a case of the Tomoki syndrome.
Can I be honest with you? I lied about that story.
You did.
I was giving an interview last Friday, and it was last Thursday, and it was going so horribly. I could not get in sync with the person who was interviewing me at all, and I was telling him about the the lights of the Oviedo Lights, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I was talking about the idea of the person, because the original story with the Oviedo Lights, the original story, is that the guy was coming back from World War II, came back, his girlfriend, his fiancée, had been cheating, and so he committed suicide from the bridge. Moral of that story?
Don't fall in love.
So I was trying to connect the two locations because we were then doing something, and I was like, the same thing exists, because I was just looking for another story to tell. And I said that the person coming back from Vietnam also had his girlfriend cheat on him, and so I kind of lied about that, but that's kind of how legends get.
You?
I'm not going to say the interviewers because I would hate to say that one show is bad and another show is good. But definitely we were not in sync.
Can you just go and then say the person name and go?
No.
Or went by a few seconds ago, Dad.
Yeah, I know. We're extremely haunted ourselves.
Extremely haunted.
So, are there any other stories that take place near Tampa or St. Pete that you think might be good for this?
There probably are. But
there probably are.
Mini lights. Mini lights.
All right, so here's the deal. I would love your opinion, and I would love the audience's opinion, and please, if you're listening to this on podcast, please email me at spookytripping@gmail.com, or you can call the number at any time, 813-418-6822. If you are on Facebook, /Tripping on Legends. IG is Spooky Tripping. Twitter is Spooky Balzano. Anything you want to do, any whatsoever. Is the Mini Lights story scary?
I don't remember much about Mini Lights. All I remember is the Mini Lights come out tonight, and there was something about alligators.
Right, which of course can't be part of the story.
Why?
So the best part of that story can't be part of this, because that's the folklore.
Oh my God,
so
chill.
The interesting thing is, you didn't hear this week's Florida Men on Florida Man.
I would like.
But they did a whole thing on the Mini Lights, and they actually told some stories about it I hadn't heard. Although they skipped the whole saying it 3 times.
They did?
So we've been talking kind of back and forth this past week. I've been saying, yelling at the people from Florida Men on Florida Man.
Yes. You're like, you didn't say to say Mini Lights 3 times. I'm unsubscribing.
When that red light turns on, that means you're too loud. Just so we know.
I'm always too loud.
But the idea of it is, what do you remember about the story? Because I think it's a fascinating legend. I think it's the most fascinating legend. Its tentacles are so deep and stretch so much, and it's such a complex story. And I could do an hour presentation just on the Mini Lights and just what I've learned about them and things like that. But is it scary? So you're going to retell the story, or you want me to retell the story?
I'll retell some of it.
Okay, go ahead.
So I think there were babies going missing, or like children going missing.
Children generally.
Children in general. And it said that like there was this witch who like took the children to work for her in the sewers. And
okay, so so one of the things that I
have short-term memory loss.
No, it's okay, because it's once again in the book. Go try to find the page number. It's once again in the book. And here was the deal. Here's the deal with the Mini Lights. I think that's an absolutely fascinating legend, but even I had a hard time following that story or telling that story, because from the very first moment, of the story, every story has to start, right? Has to have a beginning.
94.
Every story has to have a beginning, which is, in this case, once upon a time, there was a woman named Minnie. Right? That's the...
It took 15 pages to get to the actual story.
That's the problem, right? Because as soon as you open that story up, what you're dealing with is... Sometimes her name is Minnie. Sometimes the Minnie is referring to the people. Sometimes her name is this. Sometimes her name is this. Sometimes she's a Mennonite. Sometimes... it's really hard to tell that story in a linear way without picking one thread and pulling it, right? So, as I was saying, Florida Men are competing against us right now. They are also live, which is funny. We're talking about them.
Should we join them live and be like, hey,
we're not going to join their live to do it. It's really hard to tell that story without going over to here and over to here and over to here. And not in the same way of like telling the Swamp Witch, where like one story becomes another story. There are just so many variations of it that it's really hard to tell it in a point A to point B to point C way without um, without messing it up, without getting boring, without falling out of storyteller mode and into folklorist mode. There's no way to do that story. Are you raising your hand?
Yes.
There's no way to effectively tell that story and make it creepy, I think. But like I said, Florida Man on Florida Man. If you're not listening to that podcast, it's really good.
It's really good.
During October, they're doing spooky stories. They're covering some of the stories we've covered. And they did a Mini Lights episode, and they did a really good job. But they literally just went on one little strain of the story, and so I'm not sure if that story is as scary or spooky doing that. Go ahead.
It was also
The chair recognizes Ella Balzano.
No more. No further questions. Basically, it's also said that like anybody who approaches Minnie in her shack or whatever was chased off by like two protectors. Some people say it was her son. Some people say it was like people in the circus with her. But
right, and
you can never go near it without getting chased off.
And that's what the Mini Lights are. The Mini Lights are originally two ogres, or people who were presented as ogres, and then over the years they've turned into two ghost lights that chase you and kind of. You're obsessed with Robert.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, Robert doesn't work in this. Like people don't want to know about Robert. I don't think. Or we know about Robert, right? Like Robert is a 5-minute story.
I shouldn't say that Robert's dumb. He's not.
Do you have any other stories?
No, I'm fried.
From that area?
I'm fried.
How about Safety Harbor?
Safety Harbor?
Do you know the story of Safety Harbor?
I think I just read that.
It's literally, you're on the page right there.
I know.
I think Safety Harbor is one that I'm definitely going to tell because I think I can make that.
Can you like summarize it for me?
Creepy as hell.
The burial mounds.
So Safety Harbor is a place in Tampa.
I've heard about it, but I haven't.
Tampa? St. Pete? Tampa. Where no damage ever comes from hurricanes. And part of the story of it is that there was a shaman, and I got this part from Mark Muncy. There was a shaman who would go to the top of the Temple Mound, and he would conjure the water beast, like the water monster. And the water monster would rise from the water, right? Rise from the ocean, rise from the bay, and fight the wind monster. And whether he won flat out or he damaged the wind beast enough, it would go away, and Safety Harbor would be safe whenever there was a storm, except for the fact that he died, right? The last, and I got this from other sources, the last shaman died before he could pass on the knowledge of how to do this. And that made Safety Harbor open for attack, right? Both attacked by other Native Americans. It was also like the central of the Topabogan Native American tribe. And it made them for just attacked by other tribes, but also by storms. And so his ghost comes back and is seen on the temple, right? He's seen walking up there like almost every night. But when there's a storm, especially, he's seen walking up the mountain, going up to the top.
The lighthouse?
Nope, there's no lighthouse. It's just a mountain.
Okay.
But the other part of that story is that something Philippe, because it's in Philippe Park. I can't remember the guy's first name. You've stumped me here. You've stumped me here. That's me. You saying go look it up. He was granted the land, right? He was given the land because he promised to create it. He brought cigars to Florida. He brought grapefruit. He brought grapefruit to Florida. But in doing so, he destroyed pretty much the entire Topabogan village that was there, right? And in doing that, he offended the gods. And so there was a storm that was going to hit.
Count Odette Philippe.
Odette Philippe.
Odette Philippe.
Thank you. Part of the punishment for not only having destroyed all of that area and all the burial mounds that were there, and for offending the gods by trying to do the ritual to protect Safety Harbor himself, he is also forced to go up and perform the ritual. His ghost is still stuck there, walking the grounds of Philippe Park. And he walks the path from his grave to the mound on the western side of it, and his ghost can be seen like walking the path and stuff. And the only hurricane ever to really hit Safety Harbor, do you know the major damage it did?
No.
It destroyed where he was buried. Like, it destroyed his headstone, it destroyed the plot, and his body can't be found.
Oh my god.
And that's like
the
only
water
storm.
beast took him.
The only storm ever to hit Safety Harbor and do real damage. The major damage it did was destroying the grave of the person who was supposed to offend. I think that can be crafted into a really creepy story.
That would be awesome.
By the way, totally haunted. The spirits that we saw there when we were there were ridiculous. We can go to Safety Harbor if you want. Not only that, it was the last actual official legend trip of the old show. The last legend trip Natalie and I ever went on was Safety Harbor. So it's got kind of like that good feel to it too.
Me.
And you are a poor substitute.
I know.
Anything else? Anything else you want to say? No? All right, so Ella has kind of become obsessed in the last couple of days.
This is your fault because you mentioned it, and
I
tried to mention it, and you were
so
like,
she became
"Don't
obsessed. And
say
last
it
night
like
she was,
that."
So I came across this post, and I've seen the post before.
Should I pause this?
No, that's fine. I've come across the post before, and it just hit me this time, and it were things. Yes, it were.
Woo!
Ow. See, we're talking about it, and it happened. Like something falls on me. That's not. Tell me that's not a coincidence.
Satanism.
It is this. It's the list, and probably someone in here is the one who posted it the last time. Doorways to demonic possession. Okay, so these were posted forward, and I'm assuming, even though there's no date on this, that it has something to do with like the late 70s or very early 80s. I think when this was originally posted. So what I said to Ella was that I would love to have her and Devin comment on these things and see if they had ever fallen into
I'm the only one who's going to be doing it tonight.
yes, fallen into potential demonic possession. Why don't you get a little bit more over here so the camera can see?
I'm going to be possessed by a demon tonight.
And so I told her I wanted to do this, and that was on Sunday. It's Tuesday now. And she went to her youth group, which is a Christian youth group. It's one she's joining. Are you on your phone during the show?
I'm just looking at what people are saying.
And
I'm popular.
yeah, sure. And she says to her youth group leader, okay, maybe during the Satanic Panic, she says to her youth group leader, who they've been discussing forgiveness and Christian values and all those good things. And she says to her youth group leader...
No, I don't say it to the youth group leader. I say it to you, and the youth group leader is standing next to us.
She says, are you ready to go home and do the satanic things, Dad? Yeah. Yeah, are you ready? So we're not sure if she's going to be asked back into
I also joked about arson in it. Like the first week.
So there we go. So here is the
week.
list. Here is the list of things. Some people are saying it came out during the Satanic Panic. I think it predates that by just a little bit, only because it mentions one thing that was really only popular during that time. I like to think I'm a good father, but I don't think her youth group leader thinks so. All right, are you ready?
Yeah.
All right, so we're going to say how satanic are you? How likely are you to be possessed by demons based on this list? So we're going to give you, I want you to put like a check mark somewhere. Here you go. Here's a book right here.
How many of them I do or like?
Right. Like how many of these How many of these you've got a pencil?
Yeah.
All right, just go to like the last or the first page. Go right there. First page, right there. How many? Ooh, what does that say?
Devil's
Wow!
Tree! We
Oh,
forgot
crap.
Devil's Tree!
I know, but we're talking about satanic
Oh my
demons, and all of a
God.
sudden she opens up the page, and it's the episode. It's the notes from the episode we did about the satanic.
They call him
things.
to me, dude. They call him to me.
All right, here we go. Ready?
Yeah.
All right. And even if, let's say, if it's not something you've done, it's something that you're interested in. You're like, oh wow, I can see myself doing that. If that makes.
Yeah.
All right. The first thing is Eastern religions. So Eastern religions would be like Buddhism, Taoism, Shintoism.
Mm-hmm.
Does any of those things interest you, or have you practiced anything having to do with it?
I think Buddhism is cool.
Buddhism is cool. Okay. Number 2, and you guys can also at home like track your potential for possession. Yoga. You've got to talk.
Yeah, I've done yoga.
Okay. All right, you've done yoga. Yes. I remember you did yoga to Star Wars once, and you came home. You were very excited.
I did?
You did. Freemasonry.
What's that?
Like the Freemasons were a group of people that are supposed to be like the precursors of like the Illuminati. They were.
Oh, yeah.
They're all over the dollar bill.
Oh yeah,
They're a group
Illuminati.
of people. Okay.
Illuminati. Oh,
The
yeah.
next thing is Illuminati groups. So there you go. All right. The next thing is. New Age religions. So New Age religions would be kind of witchcraft. You can include in there.
Yep.
You can include.
I'm actually studying witchcraft.
Also, like maybe energy forces, things like that, like crystal worshiping, not worshiping crystals, but meditating through crystals, things like that.
I have a million checks from that. I'm actually reading those books.
Beautiful. Church of Satan.
Yes.
No, you have no idea what the Church of Satan is. That's
I
a no.
I like the sound of it.
Okay, no. Don't put that down. Scientology.
I've heard of that, but I don't know what it is.
Okay, and that's probably a little bit out of what you would be. I don't even know how to pronounce this. I'm going to do the best I can. But Rosicrucianism. So they're kind of like they're kind of like almost like an offshoot of the Freemasons. But they are having to do with like the Knights Templar and stuff like that. You don't practice that. Don't put a mark there for that. All right, here we go to more things that would probably be in your realm. Astrology.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
I believe in the zodiac.
Tarot cards.
Yes.
Ouija boards. Okay. Remote viewing. Remote viewing is like astral projection, and
yes.
you use yourself. Okay. You haven't done that though, right?
I'm studying it.
Oh, okay. Palmistry. So being able to tell the future by reading. Okay.
I like it.
Voodoo. You've never done voodoo.
It's interesting to me.
Okay. Earth worship.
Earth worship?
Mm-hmm.
What's that?
Like trying to connect to nature, but in a spiritual way. The trees, Mother Earth, Gaia, things like that.
I tried to do that.
Okay. The next thing would be Wicca.
I want to do Wicca, but I haven't.
Okay, but you're interested in it. Okay.
I guess, yeah.
Cyberpunk culture.
Cyberpunk culture?
It's not. No. That's not.
We're all open to demonic possession. That's deep.
Divination. In other words, that is
like TVs.
Right. Okay. Meditation.
Yeah, I meditate all the time. Believe it or not.
Okay. Vegetarianism.
I'm not a vegetarian, but I support anyone who is. Like, good choice for you.
Okay. Lycanthropy. That is like the love of wolves, like the love of werewolves.
Oh, yeah.
Specifically.
Yeah, I think that's cool. That sounds cool.
Okay. Backmasking. So that's the idea that back in the day, people would put backwards tracks in music. Watch, I know exactly what she's going to say. Have you ever heard of that before?
Here's to my sweet Satan.
Exactly. That's the idea of those are the backwards tracks that are in Stairway to Heaven, which we heard this morning, didn't we?
Yeah, we did. And I thought it was what did I think it was?
I can't remember.
I thought it was something.
Necromancy.
Oh yeah, I like necromancy.
Astral projection.
Obviously.
Rebirthing.
Like
rebirthing. No, rebirthing. Rebirthing is the concept or the idea that you would emotionally and psychologically travel back to the moment of your birth and experience like what that was like.
Sure.
You can't just put a check because these are things you're not into
But
that.
I'm interested in.
Okay. Kabbalah. So Kabbalah is like the mystical side of Judaism.
I don't know what Judaism is.
Okay, but you just said you don't know what Judaism is? Don't you have Jewish friends? Judaism is Jewish. Judaism.
Oh, I thought that was.
But Kabbalah is kind of like the magical, mystical side of it. So
that sounds cool, though.
Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
Firewalking.
Explain.
That's literally what it sounds like. Walking over hot coals.
You know, I joke about arson, so yeah, that sounds great.
That's probably not it. Are you into levitation or trying to levitate things?
Yes, I want to be telekinetic because it would make life so much easier.
Okay. Alt comics.
Alt comics?
So alt comics, and this is kind of what is dating this list. Alt comics are comics that came out in the 60s and 70s. Harry Crumb is probably the most prolific or most well-known of those artists. And they were really controversial. They were really dirty. They were satirical, and they were taking tax at the government and kind of other things. You're not into them.
No.
Maybe for modern times, we can put manga in there instead.
You mean manga?
Manga in there instead. Like that might be a modern equivalent, even though those aren't generally political.
Don't say the word manga unless you know how to pronounce it.
Vampirism.
Vampirism? Yeah, sure, whatever.
You're open to vampirism. Okay, there we go.
Bite me, vampires.
The next few better definitely be things. Marijuana and pop parties.
Yeah, I'm kidding.
I'm kind of baffled by the way they spell marijuana in this, but that's okay.
Why do they
LSD and shrooms, and it says shrooms instead of mushrooms.
It says shrooms.
LSD and shrooms. Those are hallucinogenics, like drugs
I know
that you
what
take.
shrooms are.
Okay, why do you know? You're 10 years old. How do you know what mushrooms are?
I'm 11.
Okay. I'm going to say you better not put a check mark on that one.
I'm not.
Video games.
Yeah, I love video games.
Harry Potter.
Yeah.
So here we have, and actually I didn't say it because I didn't want to get into what it is, but trilateralism, which is an idea from the late 70s, but then Harry Potter, which is post-Satanic Scare. So I'm not quite sure.
Yeah, they spelled it like that, Jen. They spelled it like that.
Yeah, is that a special kind of marijuana that I've never heard?
Marijuana.
Dungeons and Dragons.
Oh, when COVID ends, my friend, his mom got Dungeons and Dragons, so he says that he can invite us over.
Right, and then I suggested that you guys do a virtual one. Remember
Yes,
that? Okay, good. Halloween.
Yes! Halloween is my favorite holiday.
Okay, good. I'm going to stick the pencil for this one. Fornication.
What is that?
Okay, that's fine. We're just going to leave that one at that. Skull and Bones. So that's like secret societies, like especially within universities.
Yeah.
Rock music. And heavy metal. Heavy metal's in there. It says rock music and heavy metal. And for some reason on this list, heavy metal is highlighted and nothing else is. The Burning Man. Do you know what that is?
Man. It sounds cool.
It's a special festival like where people like get all heathenistic and like.
I think I've heard of it.
Yeah. Okay. You're not into it. Don't mark it down. Twilight.
I want to start reading Twilight. It's something I'm interested in.
Oh my god, your taste in books is horrible.
Sorry, God.
Raves and ecstasy.
Raves?
No.
I know what raves are.
You're not taking ecstasy. You're not marking down that you take ecstasy.
I'm not taking ecstasy.
And then last but not least, goth culture.
Yeah.
Goth culture. And we might even say in here, go one step further and say emo culture, too.
Not emo. I'm not like emo. Well,
You would say you're more goth than emo?
No.
I would say there's a little bit of both of you in there.
I'm not really Goth or emo.
I would say that the Oddfellows do count. This is kind of, they say Skull and Bones, but it really is kind of all of them. All right, dude. I'm thinking that the mask. I'm thinking that it has changed over time as well. What?
I'm trying to show them the painting.
Okay, so you guys can see the painting. We can go. Why don't you go like that instead of moving the whole computer? So Ella wants to show her painting. But it's time for us to wind down. Let's take a please at home. I'm not sure if steampunk.
Steampunk's great. I love steampunk
considered
so much.
as satanic as cyberpunk was. Cyberpunk was really considered this threat to society when it first came out. How satanic? You threw it over there. How satanic are you? Are you pretty much guaranteed to be going to hell?
I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35.
35 things.
I am a goner.
So if you have less than 35, you have more of a chance of making it to heaven, or for protecting yourself against the forces of evil than Ella does. And if by some chance you find yourself being victim of the forces of evil, please feel free to contact us on Facebook. We are at facebook.com/trippingonlegends. Our Twitter is Spooky Tripping.
I got it, man.
No, Spooky Balzano. Our Instagram is Spooky Tripping. You can catch us here every Tuesday night from 8:30 to 10 o'clock on Midnight FM. That's midnight.fm.
Where it's always midnight.
And you can reach out to us at spookytripping@gmail.com. And of course, please feel free to go in to rank the podcast, to tell us what you think about what we're doing here on any of those platforms. But if you have not downloaded old episodes yet, and if you haven't subscribed to the feed, what you guys hear on the live show gets kind of edited down and kind of presented in a different way when we put out the podcast. So if you're not getting the podcast, you're going to want to go to iTunes or any of the places where you get your podcast and subscribe to Tripping on Legends. Of course, the book is on sale. You can always go to Barnes & Noble or any place where you get your books, Amazon.com, and get Haunted Florida Love Stories, or you can also contact me directly, and I can get you a free copy at a discounted price. So it might be worth it just to kind of get in touch with me and let me know that you are looking for your very own autographed copy. I'm not sure how much money my autograph is worth. You are literally, once again, on your phone as we're doing the outro, which is like so ridiculously important that we get all this information across.
Well, not like you let me talk.
Please go to the event page. You can go into the notes of this episode, or you can go just to trippingonlegends.com or facebook.com/trippingonlegends to see the, I just love the name of this, the Macbeth and Cheese Theater. Macbeth and Cheese.
That's a curse word.
It is. So it's kind of interesting to name your maybe we should do a whole episode on theater curses. To name your theater after something that you're not supposed to say in the theater. It's kind of crazy. But you can go into their event page. You can check it out. Get tickets for the event. It's a one-night only thing, so if you miss it, I'm hoping to be able to do something live from it. But chances are I'm not going to be able to. So plenty of ways to get in touch with us. Halloween is in full swing. If you're feeling spooky, hit up any of those things. Tell us your favorite legend. But until then, I am Christopher Balzano.
And I am Ella Balzano.
And here's hoping that all your trips
are legendary.